Hello, everyone. I hope your day is going well. I am your host, Austin Hoagland, back for the second episode of the Man Watches Sports podcast. I'm glad to see you all today. As you guys can tell, setup is looking nice. We have the new webcam. I know the headset looks a little bit goofy compared to the professional headphones that I was using last time, but my headphones hate connecting to my computer, so we're going to have to deal with this for the time being. I hope it doesn't look too weird or unprofessional for you. But yeah, this new setup, better quality, better video quality for sure. Hopefully the audio still sounds pretty good. It should be easier to edit and upload. So let's go over the topics for today's show. We have the Baltimore Ravens on the plate today, the Eagles and Carson Wentz. We have Jamal Murray and the Nuggets versus the Lakers, the 2020 Miami Heat and their resemblance to a certain historical team, of which I will not name right now, Kyler Murray already being a superstar quarterback, Gareth Bale and his transfer to Tottenham Hotspur, and finally we'll end off with our question and answer segment. So, let's get right into it. Let's get to our first topic of the day. And this is, I believe personally, the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in football. Now let me go over the reasons why I believe the Ravens are so great. Let's look at their first two performances real quick. So in week 1 they faced the Cleveland Browns and it was an absolute blowout. We're talking 38-6. And the Cleveland Browns really couldn't do anything to the Baltimore Ravens defense. It was just a pitiful performance from them and a dominating one from the Ravens. And in week 2, the Ravens faced off against the Houston Texans, who are considered to be, a team with some talent, but they're not going to be a playoff team this year. Most people agree. They were last year, so that can kind of fool people. But they've had a pretty tough schedule so far, their first 2 weeks. Kansas City and Baltimore, you're not guaranteed to even get close to winning in either of those two games, and they didn't. So, but let's go over the specific reasons why I believe the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now. And let's start off with one of their most important aspects to their game, their rushing attack. Let's look at all of their great pieces that can run the ball. Their first one being Mark Ingram the second. Now, I believe that Mark Ingram may be one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL. Now, I know people would say, really? Like, he's up there. People think he's pretty good. And I would agree, but this guy can be a number one on almost any team in the NFL, I really do believe. Other than, the Giants with Saquon Barkley, he's out for the year, but the Giants, and there's a certain select few teams, the Saints with Alvin Kamara. There are a few teams, but Mark Ingram is just, I'd consider him to be, probably about the 10th. He's in the top 10 running backs in my eyes. I know that's a bit crazy, but, I think he's just around that top 10 area. He's a complete running back, and, maybe the box score stats don't prove that, but just from eye test, just from me watching him over the last few years, I really like Mark Ingram. I liked him out of college. And so I've kind of always, had a little bit of favoritism towards him since he won the Heisman back in his college days. And I believe he can get 1,000 yards this season if the carries don't get split up as much as they maybe could or should be. The second option is rookie out of Ohio State, J.K. Dobbins. Now for Dobbins, I actually really liked Dobbins coming out of this 2020 draft class. He was actually my top running back in that draft class, and I did believe that he would have the best future. So seeing him go to a stacked team like the Baltimore Ravens kind of scared me inside a little bit. I really expected my Kansas City Chiefs to take Dobbins with their pick in the first round. They went a different route. They went Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU, and so far, we can't really tell who's the better running back, of course. Clyde had a really good week 1 performance, and week 2, he was alright. He was okay. But I like J.K. Dobbins a lot. He hasn't really proved that much, nobody's really talking about him incredibly much, but I do believe that he has potential to be a great, at least second option for the Ravens. And it's crazy that he's going to be their second option because their third option could be at least a great second option on a lot of teams, probably a good first option on teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are running an undrafted free agent out of this year's class. I'm talking, of course, about Gus Edwards. Now, some of you might not know that name. Some of you like hardcore fans or fantasy viewers might recognize Gus Johnson. But I really do believe in Gus. I think he has some great talent. And I think that, yes, he might have benefited from being in the Baltimore Ravens offense. But I really believe that he could be great on a lot of different teams. He's shown an ability to hit the holes and get, those tough first few yards. He's really good at yards after contact. He's just really one of those guys that I trust a lot as a running back. I don't think, every time he gets the ball, I expect him to get 4+ yards. I don't expect him to fumble. And he passes the eye test for me. This last weekend, I believe he had like around 10 rushes for 74 yards. Really good game, and I'd like to see him get more carries, but him being the third option, kind of makes it hard, and I think he could probably find some success outside of the Baltimore Ravens. So we'll have to see what they decide to do with him because, he might demand some money. He's had really good performances, and maybe he's content with being on a team that's going to contend for the Super Bowl every year. So, for a while at least, I do believe. And so that's kind of their running threats, other than the obvious one. And let's talk about that real quick. Lamar Jackson. Last year, he set the single-season rushing record for a quarterback. Over 1,000 yards. That's pretty great. I mean, that's better than Michael Vick. And he is potentially the greatest running threat at quarterback of all time, which is ridiculous considering how many great running quarterbacks you can think of. Guys like Michael Vick, of course, Vince Young, and, there's a few guys you can think of who could really just run at the quarterback position. And yet this guy out of Louisville, Lamar Jackson, has proved to possibly be the best. And I think he's going to continue to be the greatest dual threat quarterback in the league for many, many years to come. I mean, we're talking he can scramble. If it's a designed running play, he can also get yards. But, I mean, this guy can improvise. He can make plays. He can make up his mind in a split second. And he can put defenders into the dirt. I mean, he can juke. He can spin. He has a wide arsenal of moves that he likes to use when he is taking it for himself and he's running up the field, Even if he's on the sideline, he's proven that he can make a lot of defenders miss. He's good at evading tackles, breaking off tackles. It's hard to bring this guy down, and he might be one of the hardest quarterbacks to plan against in the entire NFL. He's got to be like top 3, him, Mahomes, and Russell. I believe that's kind of about the top tier of quarterbacks, You can definitely, if you want to throw Drew Brees in there, you can. But I'm not going to put him in there, especially not after that Week 2 performance, But Drew Brees has proven to be a really good quarterback in the past. But I don't see him being in that top tier. Now, Lamar so far, let's go over his stats. Let's see how he's been doing passing the football, right? We just talked about how great of a runner he is. But he's called the dual threat for a reason, right? So far, Lamar's passing stats look like this. He has completed 77.9% of his passes. That is ridiculous. That is one of the greatest clips I've seen over a 2-week span. This guy is deadly accurate with the football. And he's taken some shots, too, so we can't just say he's been dinking and dunking. Like, when you see Drew Brees' completion percentage, and it's like 72, 74%, and you're like, yeah, but he doesn't really throw down the field that much. He takes an occasional shot But mainly he's throwing to Michael Thomas, about 10 yards deep, curl routes, slants. That's what you kind of think of when you think of Drew Brees. Lamar's been taking shots, and he's been deadly accurate with the football. He has a touchdown to interception ratio of 4 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. I mean, this guy has been playing like maybe the best quarterback in the league so far. Obviously Russell Wilson is the front runner for MVP, but Lamar so far, he's not very far behind. That's all I gotta say. This guy has been playing out of his mind lately, and it doesn't hurt that he has such an amazing team around him. You know, Speaking of defense, let's talk about defense a little bit, right? And the Ravens defense is pretty great. Let's talk about, do they have any holes? I don't personally think so. And let's start by talking about probably their greatest position, their cornerbacks, their defensive backs. Let's talk about their 2 cornerbacks that are the big names. Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey may be the best tandem of cornerbacks in the league. Marcus Peters, I have a long history with Marcus Peters, being a Chiefs fan. He was on the team for a while, and I was used to him getting about 6 to 8 interceptions per year. He's really good at making those big plays, and he's taken that, and he's also added to his game. I feel like he's been a lot more consistent with the Ravens at not allowing big plays. He's been more of a shutdown corner than a big play corner. Like, he still makes his big plays every now and again, but I feel like he's become just better at, just regular coverage, just zone and man. Yeah, I feel like he's just grown as a player over the last few years. Last year, he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and I think that was well-deserved. I mean, the guy has been playing fantastic for the Ravens, and, it kind of sucked when he got traded for a second-round pick, and I hated that move at the time, and I believe it was to the Rams at the time, and he played for the Rams for a little bit. But he is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I can't say enough good stuff about the guy. And then combine that with Marlon Humphrey, who he is getting to that level. He's getting to that Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Peters type level, where he, when you have a guy like Peters, right, who can shut down a number 1 wide receiver, usually you go and attack the other guys. You don't throw to that side of the field. Well, now that's a problem for teams, because when you have 2 guys who can shut down receivers with Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, you don't have that many options. What do you take? You take the safety valve, you throw to the tight end. Like, eventually teams are going to pick up on that, and they're going to run schemes that are designed to stop that kind of stuff. So now you're forced to throw to a guy who's being covered by one of the best DBs in the league. And that's not good. And they're forcing them into short passes, dinks and dunks. We're talking about a Browns offense in week 1 who had Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, a bunch of weapons, and they scored 6 points on this Ravens defense. If that doesn't show you how much of a lockdown team this Ravens team is, I don't know what does, because this Ravens team shuts down anybody and everybody. They have capable and fast linebackers. I mean, they're good against the run, but when you think about them, I mean, they're just a pass defense team. You think of their DBs, like I just mentioned, their linebackers. They can be versatile. They're a very versatile team. And they also have great pass rush. I mean, there is no spot on this team that isn't filled with at least a good, capable player. There are no big holes on this team, and I do believe they're the most complete team in football. There are 2 questions for the Baltimore Ravens right now, and I'm going to ask and kind of answer both of these questions right now, and you guys can agree or disagree. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Can this team perform the same as last year? And can they beat the Chiefs this Monday? By perform the same as last year, I really mean, can they keep the same record? Can they be a 14-2 team? Or are they going to falter against some of the better teams? As much as I just lauded, the amazing Browns offense, I mean, they're not really a great team. right? Their defense is questionable. They let up 38 points to the Ravens, and they were letting up a lot of points to Joe Burrow, who is inexperienced. As much as I love the guy, he's a rookie, right? And so I really don't know how well they can perform this season. And I really want to see how they play this Monday against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know this Chiefs team has not gotten to the level that they should be at just yet. They're not at their Super Bowl winning, form of last year. They still look like they're in preseason right now, which is not great. They still need to gel a little bit. Their chemistry is not 100%. They still have a lot of, gaps to fill and, injuries to worry about and all that stuff, especially with Watkins probably out for concussion protocol and all that jazz, all that fun stuff that the NFL season brings. I think the Ravens will have a real test this Monday against the Chiefs, and I think this will be the time to answer. Are they able to hang with the big boys like they did last year? And I think the answer will be yes. I think they'll give the Chiefs a run for their money, but I can't tell you who's going to win that game. I really can't, because I don't know what version of the Kansas City Chiefs we're going to see. And that will really determine if I think the Ravens will be that team this year. If I think they will be a Super Bowl team this year, we're going to find out, I think, this Monday, my bad. On Monday Night Football, the big stage, I guess we'll finally find out. And can Lamar and the Ravens finally get it done in the postseason? So you saw in Lamar's first year as a starting quarterback, they lost to the Chargers, and I'm not going to pin that one on him. He was going against a pretty complete team back then in the Chargers. We lauded them as, they're a very complete team. They might be the most complete team in the league. They're great at wide receiver. They're great at quarterback. They're great at tight end. Their defense is amazing. Linebackers, safeties, DBs. But they lost to that Chargers team, and it was Lamar's rookie year. So I'm not going to fault him that much for that loss. But last year's loss to the Titans, as much as we're going to look back on that Titans team and be like, they made an amazing run. They made it to the AFC Championship. They faced the Chiefs, and they gave them a run for their money. And that was the eventual Super Bowl winning team. It can't be forgotten that the Ravens were favored to win the AFC. They were the number one team in the AFC, and they should be treated as such, like they were last year. They were expected to win that game. They were expected to make it to the Super Bowl and potentially win it that year. So we can't really, take the blame off of Lamar, especially after how he performed in that game. We have to really look and be like, can they get it done? Are they a regular season team? Are they the Houston Rockets of the NFL? Are they really great in the regular season and then they just can't get it done in the postseason? I don't know. I'm willing to bet they make a farther run this season. I don't think there's going to be a Titans team that comes up and beats them again. I don't think we're going to see anything like that this year. But I think they're going to have to fight for their lives. I don't think they get into, postseason form as well as other teams like the Chiefs did last year. So that's everything for the Ravens. That's why I believe they're the best team in football. Let's talk about another team. This team is struggling. We're going to be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and their quarterback, Carson Wentz, out of North Dakota State. So let's look at why I believe the Eagles may be wanting to at least temporarily give up on Carson Wentz. I'm not sure that, if he underperforms in this week or next week, they're going to be like, well, he's lost his starting spot for the rest of the year. No, I don't think that. But I think they're willing to give other guys a shot if he doesn't do too well. And let's look at why. Why has this guy who was seen as an MVP candidate a few years ago dropped to the status of being seen as one of the worst performing quarterbacks in the league? Let's start off with his stats so far this year. He has a 58.8% completion percentage. Now, anything below 60 is seen as inaccurate. You cannot throw the football accurately. And last year you could blame it a lot on his receivers when he was missing passes, but this year, it's just been bad throws. He's made a lot of mistakes. And speaking of mistakes, he's thrown 4 interceptions and only 2 touchdowns, leading to a quarterback rating of 64.4. That's pretty terrible. You look at the stats around the league, and you're going to find a lot of guys who are doing better than that. Daniel Jones of the New York Giants is doing better than that, A guy who is looked at as a lower tier quarterback is going to be seen as doing better than this guy who is seen as, going into this year, a top 10 quarterback probably. And now he's performing like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. It's really sad to see, honestly. And I'm not a Carson Wentz hater. I'd like to preface this by saying that I love Carson Wentz. I was cheering for the guy. It hurts for me to see him underperform. But we have to face the facts. This show, it's not just all my opinions, right? I'm basing everything in actual evidence, things that I can see, things that I watch, things that can be tracked with statistics, right? This is all factually based. And Carson Wentz, statistically, is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And his team, the Philadelphia Eagles, have not been performing that well either. They've lost both their games. In the first week, they lost to the Washington football team. And while you can look at that team and be like, they're great defensively, They have Chase Young, they have Montez Sweat, they have Ioannidis, they have guys like that. They have a scary defense that a lot of teams are going to have to worry about. But this team, especially Carson Wentz, in his first game of the season, needing to prove something, just did not put up the performance we were expecting. And he actually underperformed what people were expecting, even with this Washington defense that people knew was going to be pretty good right off the bat. And the Eagles in general just did not play that well. Their defense let up points to Terry McLaurin and Dwayne Haskins and the the Washington football team's offense. My bad. They also lost to the Los Angeles Rams in Week 2. And I like the Rams. You're going to see later on. I really like the Rams. But, it wasn't a great loss. It wasn't a loss where they looked competitive against a great team. They looked like they were a bottom feeder losing to a great team. It wasn't great. And Carson Wentz underperformed again against a Rams defense that, they have Jalen Ramsey. They have a bunch of guys, a lot of pay, a lot of paid guys. A lot of guys who are paid a lot. So they're seen as really good. But, even the Cowboys kind of put up a better performance than the Eagles against this Rams team. And I just, I haven't been convinced. I haven't been convinced by watching Carson Wentz these last 2 weeks. And that's not a good thing. He has a large injury history, right? I mean, we've seen this guy go down time after time. Season after season, I swear every season I see at some point a notification pop up on my phone, Carson Wentz out for so-and-so amount of weeks, out for season. He's done. He tore his ACL. He, fractured his tibia. I don't know, whatever, right? He's injured a lot. And we've seen that pretty much every year. And so there's not a lot of trust in the first place between the Eagles and Carson Wentz. They don't trust him to get through a full season at this point. And I wouldn't either. If I was the GM of the Eagles, I wouldn't, seeing what he's done. And even when he's fully healthy this season, both of the other high-profile QBs from his draft class, Jared Goff and Dak Prescott, they've both been performing better than him this season so far. And that's bad to see, because people lauded Carson Wentz as the highest guy to look at. He's the best quarterback coming out of that draft class. By far, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott are both overrated. They're both on garbage teams. I've heard people say that before, and people don't believe in Dak, and people don't believe in Jared, but people believe in Carson Wentz, and he's taken that belief and he's crushed it so far. It's not great. And so it's bad to see him underperforming stats-wise compared to those two guys and team record-wise, because both of those teams are doing better than his Eagles. Now, how have the Eagles shown this mistrust towards Wentz? This year, in the 2020 NFL Draft, they took a guy with I'd say, high ceiling in Jalen Hurts. Now, let me explain that. A lot of people look at Jalen Hurts, and they say, this guy, he's not good. He's not NFL ready. And I would agree. He's not exactly NFL ready yet, from what I've seen on the tape, in college. I don't think he's NFL ready just yet. But he has a high ceiling. I think he has high potential. He has the raw talent. And they took that guy in the draft out of Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts. I think it's because they're looking at giving another guy a chance. Maybe it's because they thought Carson Wentz was going to get injured, or maybe they even, thought Carson Wentz was going to underperform, and if they did, they would have been right. Jalen Hurts, he might see the field at some point soon, and we just have to accept that, because the Eagles might look to replace him if he has another bad few performances, to the point where, our record's already bad anyways, and you're not playing well, so why not give another guy a chance? Why not give Jalen Hurts a chance to get into the game, and see what impact he has on the offense? It's worth trying at this point, And so let's look at what Carson Wentz can do to save his image. This week, the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Cincinnati Bengals and their quarterback, Joe Burrow, out of LSU. Now, I think this is a pivotal game with huge ramifications on the Eagles and Carson Wentz. I think if Joe Burrow outperforms Wentz and the Bengals win this game, I think the Eagles are going to be looking at Wentz and they're going to say, hey, I know you've been good in the past, but so far you haven't shown me anything, and we're going to have to look at giving another guy a shot in this offense. Maybe they bench him for a week, and they put in, if he's healthy, Jalen Hurts or Nate Sudfeld. Maybe they look at other options. Because so far, it's just been a net negative for Wentz. And so I think this week is going to be a big thing. If he comes out and he slings that football, he has 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, good completion percentage, then I think he's safe temporarily. Because that at least shows us that we know he has that potential this year to do something. He's inconsistent right now, but no preseason, just the OTAs. Maybe he's just getting into this season a little slow. And this is something weird from Wentz, right? Because we saw him in the 2017 season, right? He almost had the MVP award before getting injured in Week 16. I believe that award went to Tom Brady, I want to say, that year, the MVP. And Wentz was very close. He was the front runner to win that award. And he played amazingly. He led this Eagles team to a lot of wins. And they were one of the best teams in the league. They ended up winning the Super Bowl that year with Nick Foles. But Wentz was really just that guy for them that whole year. And I don't know if they played with Nick Foles for the whole year, if they end up winning that Super Bowl. So it's interesting to think about, right? He played so greatly, but the real question is, can he recapture that same magic that he had in that MVP season? Can he put it together one more time? Can he really, have that kind of MVP-esque season? And so far, I think he's out of, any kind of award race right now. But I think he could come back and have a good season. He had a rough few first weeks, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now. I'm really going to be having 3 eyes locked in on that Bengals-Eagles game this weekend, and we really will get a chance to see if Wentz is the real deal. So that's all I have about Carson Wentz and the Eagles. I think it's a little interesting. I think that it's going to be a fun situation to monitor over the next few weeks. And I think it'll be a big topic of conversation between NFL fans over these next few weeks. My name is Austin Hoagland. I'm actually going to take my first break for the episode, and we will be right back. Welcome back. We are back and ready to hop right back in to the topics. My next topic is going to be Jamal Murray. Now, I believe Jamal Murray, point guard for the Denver Nuggets, has proved that he is a star in this playoffs, especially against the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that team, right? Now let's get into why, right? Why has Jamal Murray proved he's been a star? He wasn't exactly amazing in the regular season. Less than 20 points per game. Nothing spectacular, right? Came out of Kentucky. We've all been waiting for him to make that star jump, but he never really has. But in Game 3 against the Los Angeles Lakers, he put up 28 points, 8 rebounds, 12 assists on 10 for 17 shooting and 4 from 8 from 3. Now, I believe that in itself is a stat line that you can't really ask for much more from your point guard. And that's why I do believe he's a star, right? You can't really ask more from a point guard than that stat line. Yeah, you could be like, oh, well, why don't you just go get 40 then? But he almost put up a triple-double with 28 points. And on top of that, he hit a dagger 3 to stop a huge Lakers comeback in the fourth quarter. The Los Angeles Lakers actually were starting to make a huge comeback in the fourth quarter. They were down 20 at one point, and they brought it back to within 3 later in that same quarter. And Jamal Murray had the presence of mind and the shots, the great, amazing shots that he took to take that game and win it for the Nuggets. Hold on, stop the bleeding, really clutch out that game for the Denver Nuggets, right? And that's something that you really only see stars do, right? You can see a big shot from a role player, like you think of Robert Horry had some shots for the Lakers where he, really went off and clutched up sometimes, but he didn't have the same performances that Jamal Murray has had so far. And I don't even think that the Denver Nuggets would be in the position that they're in right now without Jamal Murray. Let's especially look back at their first series against the Utah Jazz. Now, if you guys remember that series, it was a few weeks ago, right? The Denver Nuggets, I believe, won Game 1. And then from there, the Jazz won 3 in a row. And it looked like they were really there to, take it. They looked like it was their series to lose, and it was. And they found a way to lose it because of Jamal Murray and the insane games he was having. In the first round, he averaged 31.6 points on 55% shooting from the field, 53% from 3, and 92% from the line. Those are some of the best shooting splits, you can really have. You don't expect more than, 92% from the line or so. There are guys who've hit like 95% of their free throws, but 92% is amazing. 53% from 3. I mean, it takes a special guy to be able to take so many threes and so many shots and just make so many of them. I mean, this guy is shooting at an insane clip right now. And it just seems like he can't miss. The classic meme, he can't miss. And it just feels like that right now for Jamal Murray, He's taken some insane shots. He's taken some deep threes, off the dribble type stuff, guys in his face, and even just some catch and shoot stuff. And no matter what kind of shot he takes, every time I watch Jamal take a shot, I immediately am just like, that's going in. It's going in. Because that's the kind of stuff that he's earned during this playoffs. He's earned that kind of reputation of, you gotta be closing out against this guy. And the only team that's managed to do that decently successfully is the Los Angeles Clippers, right? I mean, they have so many perimeter defenders. You look at Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Patrick Beverly, right? They got a lot of guys who can come to the perimeter and just absolutely get in your face, do anything they can. They can close out super well. They're great against shooters. And they locked him up pretty well for a few games, but even then, I think Murray really did contribute to that big comeback that they had from down 3-1 against the Los Angeles Clippers. And it really seems like he's continued that same momentum that he's had in these last two series, and he's taken that and he's just, kind of added to it a little bit, right? Because he's facing a better team in the Los Angeles Clippers, right? They still don't have the same level of perimeter defense. No Avery Bradley there. You're mainly looking at guys like Rajon Rondo, and, sometimes on some possessions he gets LeBron, but not very often. KCP sometimes guards him. A few of those guys, but, not really the same level of perimeter defense, but still he's facing a better team, and somehow he's putting up pretty insane numbers, and the Denver Nuggets would be down. They would actually be out of this series right now if it wasn't for him. They would have gotten swept, which is pretty crazy because they also have Jokic, who I haven't even mentioned so far when talking about the Nuggets, and that's just how prolific Jamal Murray's been this playoffs. Now, I know Jokic is their star. He's their superstar player. Without Jokic, this team might not even be in the playoffs in the first place, but it's been Jamal Murray who's been the one that's stepped up, and I'd even say he's probably been their best player in the playoffs. That might be crazy to say. Not a lot of Jokic stans might come after me, but I really think that Murray, especially after that first round series, he had a lot to prove. And, he saved them against a Utah Jazz team that had the best performing player in the first round in Donovan Mitchell. There was only one guy who played better than Jamal Murray, really, in the first round, and it was Donovan Mitchell. I mean, this guy was lights out, like he was carrying the team like his name was Michael Jordan, right? I mean, it was ridiculous what this guy was doing on a game-to-game basis, and he left his heart out there, and it just wasn't enough, right? And they had Rudy Gobert, who managed to, after Game 1, really, because at Game 1, Gobert had a little trouble with Jokic, but it kind of went under the radar that, many of the other games, Gobert was, playing at least, good to great defense on Nikola Jokic and limiting him to an extent. It's very hard to neutralize Jokic, unless your name is Dwight Howard, of course. But Jokic is a hard guy to guard, and Gobert managed to clamp him up at least a decent bit in that series, and yet the Nuggets somehow came back from down 3-1, and we owe a lot of that to Jamal Murray and his play, And so the real question for Murray now is, can he replicate this in the regular season? How will he play next season? What's his career trajectory? Do we see him making an all-star team, an all-NBA team, maybe a award winner down the line, And to that I say, I think next season he's going to be better, right? Now, to what extent, I'm not 100% sure yet. But if I had to make a prediction right now, I'm saying he's going to average 23 plus points. And I think he'll at least be in the talks for an all-star team. All-NBA, I'm not ready to put him there yet, especially not with Steph Curry coming back into the West, right? I mean, he's guaranteed one spot, right? And there's a bunch of guys in the West guards that are amazing, so, it's really hard to see him making an All-NBA team. But an All-Star team, I think he may be able to sneak in there. I think he'll be in the conversation. Now, what I see him potentially winning, awards-wise, is Most Improved Player. I think if he goes from under 20 points, like around 18.5, I believe, this season, to like 25 plus points next season, and he manages to get Denver to win a few more games, maybe they're the second seed in the West, right? I see that as, potential, potentially winning him the Most Improved Player award. Now, there's going to be guys who maybe make bigger jumps than that. Maybe they go from a guy who hasn't really proved too much yet to a star in the league. But, I think Jamal Murray could be a guy that we're looking at as a top 10 point guard, like locked in top 10 point guard next season. Like, I think he might be able to be better than, like, Kyle Lowry. I mean, that's a tough decision to make between him and Lowry, because Lowry was also great this postseason, and he was great this regular season. But I think he can be on that same tier. And even though I don't believe that the Denver Nuggets will emerge out of this postseason, I think that they're going to lose to the Lakers. They're down 3-1, right? I don't think they're going to win. But I have to give them their credit. I don't think anybody can take away what the Denver Nuggets have done this postseason, right? I mean, they come back from down from 2-3-1 leads, and they stole a game from a Los Angeles Lakers team who we see as the favorites to win the finals. A great team with guys like Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Jokic was also having some troubles with Dwight Howard on him most of the series. So we really have to look at what Jamal Murray's done in a historical context and really determine, how good was this guy in the postseason. And I think he's proved to be a star in the NBA, and I think he might be for years to come. So I'm excited to see what this guy's going to do, and I only expect the best from him from now on. Now that we've kind of gone through that side of the bracket, let's focus on the other side of the bracket, because I have something to say about this Miami Heat team, this 2020 Miami Heat team, and their similarity to the 2004 Detroit Pistons. Now, I believe there's a lot of parallels between these two teams, but I want to get to this point right off the bat because I know that people are going to contest this for this reason, right? So I want to get this argument right out of the way so that we can move on to the rest of the stuff that I see. And that is that there's no definitive superstar on this team. A lot of people are going to look at this and be like, but Jimmy buckets, right? Jimmy Butler, he's a shooting guard / small forward out of Marquette who plays for this Miami Heat team. He's a lockdown defender. He had all right seasons, or all right stats in the regular season, but he's really stepped it up this postseason. He's an amazing leader, but you can't call him a superstar in my eyes, right? I don't think he's a superstar. Superstar is a term that I reserve for guys like LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, right? James Harden. And to me, Jimmy Butler isn't on that same tier, right? I think he's a star. And, I think he's better than any of the players on that 2004 Detroit Pistons team were. But at the same time, I wouldn't define him as a superstar, right? So maybe some people say, oh, well, that should disqualify this comparison. But I think it's just close enough to where I think this comparison is going to work. Now, the reason I even came up with this comparison in the first place is because before one of these Heat-Celtics games, I want to say it was Chauncey Billups was interviewing Bam Adebayo. And that kind of that kind of went in my head, right? Maybe there are similarities between these two teams. So we think of this Detroit Pistons team as one without a superstar. And I believe the Heat also don't have a superstar, right? So that's right off the bat. The Pistons team was known for their ferocious defense. You think of Ben Wallace. You think of Rasheed. You think of Chauncey. You think of Rip Hamilton, right? You think of all these guys, and they're known as a great defensive team. Guys would lock down, right? And defense isn't exactly the same as it used to be. So comparing the defenses is a little bit different because they're playing two different styles of defense. But I think it's fair to call them both great defenses and great team defenses, right? There are a few good individual defenders on both teams, but they play great team defense. When you think of the Heat, my primary thing that I always go to is their defense, right? Number 2 would probably be their shooting. They got shooters, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. But the first thing I think of is their defense. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, guys like that. And so I think that they both have a defensive identity. I think that's fair to say. And I think they both had great veterans and young players coming together to gel into a perfect team. And when I say team, I mean not just like, a noun team, like oh well they're a team. Any NBA franchise has a team, right? The Charlotte Hornets have a team. But I mean a team, like a group of guys who are focused on the same goal and are willing to put their bodies on the line. They're willing to come out and give their best performances to win NBA games in the postseason. I think they have amazing chemistry, right? I think they work perfectly together. And when people think of that 2004 Pistons team, I think they really don't think of any individual guys, right? I mean, yeah, you can name guys, but it's the same way with the Heat team, like, right? I mean, when you think about them, you don't think about, oh, well, that's Jimmy Butler's team, right? I mean, yeah, Jimmy Butler's on the team, and he's a great piece on the team, but it's not like a carry job, right? I mean, you think of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, even their role players, come into play. You kind of think about it. Goran Dragic, the Dragon, he's had a pivotal role in this postseason, right? I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team who have made a huge impact. So I think they're more of a team than a lot of other guys. Like the Lakers, you look at them and you say that's LeBron and Anthony Davis's team, right? When you look at the Heat, you just think of a lot of guys. You don't think of a single guy. At least that's how I look at it, right? And they're making a great run in the playoffs. And speaking of, right, let's look at who they're probably going to face. The Los Angeles Lakers. Does this seem familiar? Because I do think it seems familiar, right? The 2004 Detroit Pistons actually beat a stacked LA team, a Big Two, in the 2004 finals. They faced off against Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, and that was their last year together for the Lakers. And they lost to that Detroit Pistons team, and this year, most likely, it is going to be the 2020 Miami Heat facing off against a stacked LA Lakers team, this time with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, if things go like they are supposed to go. So the real question for them is, can they go all the way, right? I mean, they're a great team, but are they on the same level where they can upset a team that is looked at as a heavy favorite, A team that people say the Lakers are probably going to beat the Miami Heat in 5, right? And I don't think so, man. In my eyes, I think the Heat are going to take this 6 or 7. Now, do I believe the Heat are going to win against the Los Angeles Lakers? Probably not, right? And we'll get more into those predictions when the NBA Finals actually roll around, right? I don't want to give too much away on what I think. Gotta save some content for some future episodes. But I thought it was interesting to kind of look at, the Miami Heat and their comparisons to the 2004 Detroit Pistons, how they're similar, how they're different. I think it was just a fun kind of thing to roll around in my head, and maybe you guys disagree, but it was just a fun topic for me, so I decided to go into it. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. We're actually going to pivot back to the NFL for one topic real quick, and it's going to be about a new emerging superstar, a rising star in the league, Kyler Murray. Now, I want to say this. I think Kyler Murray is already a superstar quarterback. And many of you may be looking at me with a side glance. But this is what I think, right? Kyler Murray out of Oklahoma came in last year with a terrible Cardinals team. Horrible O-line. They're lacking a deep threat outside of Larry Fitzgerald. You think of guys like Andy Isabella, maybe he's a deep threat, but, he's got great speed. Or Christian Kirk, he's a great receiver. but none of them were really that consistent, and I just don't think that team was good enough, you know. And Kyler, even with all those holes, even having a bad defense, which I didn't even mention, he still became the 2019 AP Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was still great. He wasn't fantastic. He wasn't, jumping off the page. Like, we were all like, this guy has good potential, right? He had a good rookie season, but none of us were like, this guy is the next guy up, right? He's the next Russell Wilson. He's the next Lamar Jackson. He's the next Patrick Mahomes. None of us really said that yet. Now, this Cardinals team had an off season to get better, and they really took that to heart, right? They really looked at their guys. They looked at Kyler, and they're like, we're going to get you some help. We're going to help you out, which is what all teams should do with a emerging superstar quarterback. And so they made one big trade, right? We can talk about the little moves that they made all day and how it's led to this team to get better, but let's talk blockbuster, right? I like talking blockbuster. So the Cardinals made a trade with the Houston Texans, and they gave away a pick and Derek Johnson, and they received DeAndre Hopkins. In a lot of people's eyes, he may be a top two. Some people think he's the best receiver in the NFL. He's top three in most lists, and I would consider him to be top three. I don't know where I'd put him, really, right now, on the spot, maybe he's below guys like, I don't know, maybe I put him number one, now that I'm thinking about it, it's him and Julio kind of towards the top for me, so I think he might be number one in my eyes, but it was a huge trade for the Cardinals, right? This guy is a deep threat. He's a threat anywhere on the field, man. This guy is ridiculous. He has great hands. I don't think I need to explain why DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver from the Texans, now on the Cardinals, is an amazing football player, right? And so through the first two games of the season, Kyler Murray has 158 rushing yards on 7.5 yards per carry. And I know that's, pretty good. Most people might be thinking, it's pretty good. But even those numbers don't really speak to how great that is, Let's put it in historical context here. Kyler Murray is on pace to become the NFL leading rusher for a single season by a quarterback. He is on pace to break Lamar Jackson's record set last season. Now, if I asked you right now, right, if I put a gun to your head and I said, hey, who's a better running quarterback? Is it Lamar Jackson or is it Kyler Murray, right? Most of you would probably say Lamar Jackson, and I'd probably agree with you. But I don't think we should take anything away from Kyler and what he's managed to accomplish. I think we should give him his flowers right now, right? I think he deserves them. And I think he is one of the best dual threats in the league, right? He's top three dual threats in the league. I put him number two. As much as I love Russell Wilson, I put him number two. And Josh Allen, too. He's pretty amazing running the football. He's made some great throws, especially one in week 2. If you guys have watched the film, you'd know. But in week 2, he got outside the pocket, right? He rolled out to the right, I believe, and he made a great throw to the sideline. DeAndre Hopkins, great catch, and he just placed the ball perfectly, right? Kyler Murray has all of the things you want out of your cornerstone, out of your QB. He has, freak athleticism. This guy is 1 in a million, it feels like. Not in the NFL, right, where you have guys like Mahomes, you have guys like Russell Wilson, but in the real world, he's, a 1 in a million guy. Not many people are born with that kind of athleticism. He has a great ability to run, right? I don't think I need to go into this because I think the stats speak for themselves on that one, but he is amazing. Scrambling or quarterback design runs, he's great at. And he also has a rocket arm, right? He can throw it down the field. This guy, has arm talent, right? Which most quarterbacks do. There's a few guys you kind of look at and be like, yeah, they kind of got questionable arm strength. You look at a guy like Gardner Minshew, you're like, can this guy really throw the ball 50 yards down the field? I don't know. But, I'd say he's up there, like top 10 in arm strength. I couldn't tell you right off the bat who the top 10 arm strength quarterbacks in the league are, but I think he's top 10. And I think once he eliminates his mistakes, mainly interceptions, right? He's thrown 2 interceptions through the first 2 weeks. And that's not terrible, right? I mean, there's guys who have done worse. Tom Brady has, I believe he has 2 or more interceptions. He had 2 in week 1, right? But I think once he gets a little more accurate, right, just a little bit, I think he's doing well right now, about 66 or so percentage completion. But I think once he kind of eliminates just those little mistakes, I think he has the potential to be a top 3 quarterback in the league. I think it's fair. I think that's a fair statement to make. Maybe he never cracks the top 3, but I think he does. Once Russell Wilson kind of slows down a little bit, I think it'll be him, Lamar, and Mahomes in that top class. So it's really up to him what he wants to do, whether he wants to, look at the film or practice, but he needs to eliminate those mistakes, and then I think he's there. I think he's in that class. I think he's a superstar right now. And he's part of a growing trend in the NFL lately. Over the last few years that I've been watching, I've really noticed one thing, and that is the second year QB stardom season. That's what I'm going to name it, the second year stardom season. The SSSS. A lot of S's there. Alliteration. I love it. I really see that out of a few quarterbacks. You look at the best quarterbacks in the league. Patrick Mahomes, right? When did he come up? His second season. And I know you can say, oh, well, he only started 1 week in his rookie season, week 17 against the Broncos. But, it's all the same to me, right? I mean, he got preseason snaps. He was in practice the whole year. And he came out. I don't think he would have had an amazing rookie season, right? I mean, we saw that in the Broncos game. He had potential, but he wasn't quite there yet. And you look at Lamar Jackson, right? And he made a huge jump in his second year, right? I mean, he was good in his first year, but he wasn't the type of passer that he is now. He was a good runner, right? People were like, oh, you have a running back as your quarterback to the Ravens. And now they can't say that, especially not through these first 2 weeks. And now we're seeing that with Kyler Murray. I don't know what's up with this second year stardom season for quarterbacks, but maybe we can expect that out of Joe Burrow next season, you know what I'm saying? We'll find out, I guess. But I don't know what really goes into that. I can't tell you why that happens. But it's just a trend that I want to make you guys aware of. It's kind of strange. And I believe that him and the Arizona Cardinals have a bright future ahead of them. We'll have to see where exactly they go from here. But I think that they are destined for great things, not only this year, but down the line. They have improvements to make, right? We can all agree with that. The Cardinals aren't a complete team. They're not a top 3 team in the league. But they're a good team, and I think that they're going to make the playoffs this year. And they could go like 10-6. 12-4 is probably their ceiling. We'll find out. We'll really see down the line. But they haven't had an amazing start so far, right? And the Cardinals look smarter and smarter every day for giving up on Josh Rosen. I love Josh Rosen. I loved him coming out of college, right? He was actually, if I had to rank the quarterbacks coming out of that draft, I probably would have put him 3rd. I liked Sam Darnold. Now, I don't know. Man, Sam Darnold, terrible so far. But I've loved Josh Rosen, and I wish him nothing but the best. But so far, he has not proven to even be an NFL quarterback. And the Cardinals were kind of ridiculed at the time a little bit for getting rid of him to take Kyler Murray. And I think everyone who said that is now looking back and being like, we were wrong, right? Kyler Murray is great. Josh Rosen can't even find a spot in the league. And Kyler Murray is going out and torching NFL defenses in his second year. So good things for the Cardinals, good things for Kyler Murray. I'm happy for him, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here. I'm going to take my second and final break for this episode. When we come back, we're going to talk about Gareth Bale at Tottenham, and we're going to get into our question and answer segment, and that'll be it for the show. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, we are back for the last time. Let's hop into the last two topics for the day. The first one is Gareth Bale and his signing to Tottenham Hotspur. Will it turn them into a top 4 team in the Premier League? Let's talk about it. So far, Tottenham is 1-1 on the Premier League season. They started off with a pretty bad performance against Everton, right? They couldn't even score a goal, and they were outmatched by a team in Everton that had a lot of new pieces. This team was expected to be, middle of the pack. Everton's been performing really well throughout the first 2 match days. Let's not get that wrong. But if you put them against Tottenham, people were going to take Hotspur, right? People predicted Tottenham to win this game. And it was kind of a shocker to see the kind of stinker that they put up. And they couldn't even score a goal. It was 1-0, right? It wasn't a great game to watch anyways. But they didn't look good at all. Let's just put that out there right now. They didn't look good at all. Not a good first week. But then you look at their second week and you start to get a little bit of hope because they defeated Southampton 5-2. But if you look closer into the game, if you watch the game, if you kind of look at the tail of the tape, right, go back and watch the film, you kind of notice that this game was much closer than the score indicates. Now, I know that Tottenham won by 3 goals, right, and that kind of suggests that it wasn't close at all. But I think this game could have easily been 5-5, right? Southampton kind of whiffed on a few opportunities that they should have had, and I know that that's their fault and not Tottenham's fault. Like, you can only play the team that's in front of you. But, Southampton had a lot of chances on this Hotspur defense, and that hasn't really been that great. And so Tottenham have been looking for another piece. Let's just put it that way, right? They've been struggling, and they have needed to find somebody to come in and bring some excitement to the club, right? I mean, I know they have Harry Kane, they have Son Heung-min. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name. Very hard for me to get down. But they have some good pieces, right? But they just couldn't, they don't have the same hype around them that other clubs do. And so they decided to sign Gareth Bale from Real Madrid on loan, and I think this is going to be a fun one, right? I think this is going to be fun to watch, at the very least. Gareth Bale, he was known for playing at Hotspur, so he's coming home, as you could say. And let's talk about what this means for Tottenham and what this means for Gareth Bale. Now, Bale has been plagued by injuries at his time with Real Madrid. And also a little bit of locker room issues. There's been a lot of drama involving Gareth Bale at Real Madrid. They didn't appreciate him that much, so he stopped kind of appreciating them. It hasn't looked good for the relationship between those two. So it was good that he got out of Real Madrid. I'm happy for him. I'm happy that Real Madrid have looked to go some other way, though they didn't really look good in their first match. But I think that Bale has a chance here. The key word is chance, right? We can't just say right off the rip that he's going to play a specific way, because he has been plagued by injuries. Maybe he doesn't play that much for Tottenham this season, and maybe when he does play, he's not 100%. Maybe he doesn't look amazing in his games. Maybe he doesn't make a great impact, And that's a possibility. We have to face that. That's a possibility. Because maybe he doesn't gel with Harry Kane and Son Heung-min, right? We'll have to see how that goes. It's going to be interesting to to see how he fits into this team, into a Tottenham Heat team that needs more firepower. They need more oomph to their team, to their club. And I think it'll be interesting to see how he fits into that team, right? And the real question is not on Gareth Bale and how he performs, but it's how Tottenham performs with Gareth Bale. Because they have always had high expectations. They're seen as, a consistent top 6 team, and so far they haven't been playing like it. And the real question is, will this signing propel them into top 4 contention? And while I'd love to be all peaches and roses about this signing and say that Gareth Bale is going to be the difference for Tottenham, I can't confidently say that, and I'm actually going to go ahead and say that they will not be in the top 4 this season. Now, do I believe they can be fighting for a spot? Maybe, there's a slight chance, but I think there are holes on this team that are not in the same position that Gareth Bale plays in. I think they have problems on the back end with their defenders. I think they, need to make some more signings. I don't think Gareth Bale should be their be-all, end-all piece to improving this side. And I hope that's not how Tottenham sees it, like he's, a Band-Aid on this team because they have kind of an open blood wound, right? They have more pieces that they need to fill, and Gareth Bale isn't going to solve all of their problems. So I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up against teams like Arsenal. Arsenal has looked great these first 2 match days, and, maybe Arsenal takes those top 4 spots. Maybe it's Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea, and Arsenal. Maybe they're the top 4, but we have teams like Everton and, maybe Manchester United. We'll have to see how they do, vying for those kinds of spots. So I don't think it is at all guaranteed that the Gareth Bale signing propels Tottenham into that kind of contention. And I think it really primarily depends on which version of Gareth Bale we see. Is it the constantly injured and not 100% Gareth Bale, or is it the superstar player who can make a huge difference on any club, Bale? Like I said, I don't think he alone can make Tottenham into a top 4 contending team, but I think if this team starts to play a bit better, and maybe they make 1 or 2 more decently big signings, and Gareth Bale plays well, then I think they're in that contention spot, and I think that they will be able to at least, be in the top 6, I think, if that's the case, I think we'll have to see. It's a wait-and-see game at this point for Tottenham, and no matter what, I think this will be interesting. I think it'll be fun. It's going to be nice to see Gareth Bale back in the Premier League. I wish him and I wish Tottenham nothing but the best, and I hope the best for him. I hope that he comes out and he absolutely performs extremely well. We see him and Harry Kane and Son, and they're going out and, being exciting on a weekly basis. So, hats off for him. No matter what, I think Gareth Bale has had a great career, and I have to give him his flowers, right? So that's all I have about Gareth Bale and Tottenham. So let's move on to our final segment, the question and answer segment. And I want to preface this by saying, if you have any questions at all about sports, please drop a comment down below. I'd really appreciate seeing any comments, asking questions, and I promise to answer them, if not in the comments, then on a video podcast, another future episode of the show, just like this. So, for this one, I actually had, one comment that asked a lot of questions from the great man himself, Hunter, my own brother, who asked this question, or these series of questions. After the NFL games this weekend, please let us know your power rankings. Also, what is your early Super Bowl prediction for this year? Do the injuries on the 49ers team hold them back from making the playoffs this year? I want to thank Hunter for his great questions, and I'm actually going to answer all of them right here, right now. I was debating what exactly I wanted to do with the power rankings, but I'm going to do an Elite 8 teams, right? So I'm going to give you my top 8 teams in the league, number 8 to number 1. I'm going to give you some short explanations on why I think they're the top 8 teams in the league, and then we'll move on to the next few questions, right? Number 8, I have the Cardinals. They've looked super good, but may not be dynamic enough to be the best team in their conference. They have some tough competition in the NFC West, and they're going to have to prove a little more. So with that, they're facing off against teams like the 49ers and the Seahawks and the Rams. That's a tough division to be in football. Those are 4 really good teams in the NFC, and I could see all of them making the playoffs. I know that's ridiculous, but, one team's going to have to take the fall. This year it looks like it may be the 49ers, but, maybe the Cardinals start to lose some steam. But for now, I think they're, a top 8 team in the league, and I think we have to give them their props. They're 2-0. Speaking of another 2-0 team with a rising quarterback who I have to give their props to, the Buffalo Bills with a similar story, right? I love the coach in McDermott, I love Josh Allen. He's had some of his best games of his career just now in these first few games of this season. The defense looks great, They should be vying to win the AFC East. Their only competition really looks like it is going to be the New England Patriots, surprised with Cam Newton. But I think that they may have the talent to overcome that Patriots team and go 10-6, 12-4. I think this is a really good Bills team. And the real question for them is, can the run by Allen be sustained? Can he have an MVP-type season? Nobody really looked at Josh Allen other than Bills fans, over his rookie season and his second season in the league, and really said, that's the guy. He's going to be an MVP-type guy for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think many people said that, especially not this early. At number 6, I have the Los Angeles Rams. They're undefeated right now. It seems like they made the right move in getting rid of Gurley. They've had guys like Akers at running back stepping up, and they still have so much talent, right? I think of all the talent that they have on this team, and with Jalen Ramsey, it's a good team, right? This is a really good team, just everywhere, kind of. They don't have too many holes. And it seems like, Goff has been better this season. He had a down season last season, and he didn't really look like that guy. He was kind of reverting, regressing a little bit. But he's been great, and he has a great receiving core to throw to. He has guys that he can trust all across the field. So, great start for the Rams, and I expect great things out of them. Another AFC East team, the New England Patriots. It may be a high ranking for a 1-1 team, but I really do believe in Cam Newton and Bill Belichick. Their offense has looked fluid and consistent. Cam Newton, he's been great on both sides. He's the true meaning of the word dual threat. And they're maximizing the talent of their young guys. Their young receivers, their young defenders. Bill Belichick and the New England coaching squad always finds a way to have a great defense. It doesn't matter their personnel. It doesn't matter who's taking the season off for COVID, or who's injured or who left the team. There's all these moving pieces every year, but they always have such a great defense. And look where they are right now. They look like an amazing team. So we're about to get into the top 4, the top half. Let's start off with the Green Bay Packers. I have a lot to say. Aaron Rodgers continues to play with a chip on his shoulder. They have dynamic running backs, especially Aaron Jones. They may need another big-time receiver outside of Devontae Adams. They have guys like Valdez-Scantling, good guys, good but not great guys, right? We look at them and we're like, they can have a good game. But can they consistently be amazing receivers? I don't think so. I don't think they have that guy yet. And I think they may have to sign him or make a trade for him. Is it this season? maybe we'll see who's available. But, you know, I think that it would have done them a lot of good to maybe go after Stephon Diggs this offseason or something like that. And it's a solid but not incredible defense. We saw that against the Vikings. They gave up a lot of points against the Minnesota Vikings. They were a good team. Good but not great. We'll have to see how the defense continues to play. They have talent there, but it hasn't exactly translated into, preventing the team from scoring a lot of points. At number 3, I have my home team, my team, the Kansas City Chiefs, right? And it hurts me. It hurts me to not put them number 1, trust me. If I was a homer, if I was the guy who was just going to advocate for my team, right? They're 2-0, so I have every excuse to put them at number 1, but I can't. I am somewhat, objective while doing this. I consider myself a journalist, so I have to be objective, and I just need to see a little bit more out of the team, right? I mean, a few injuries have killed the defensive back depth. Charvarius Ward, he was injured last week, and at some point during special teams, Antonio Hamilton was injured, so we're really just looking at guys like L'Jarius Sneed, and he's been good, trust me, he's been good, but it's not great, right? There are holes on this team, I think, and Juan Thornhill just hasn't looked good coming off of his injury, and I think he'll eventually make it back right. I have to cut him some slack. He just came off of a huge injury that he sustained last season, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and see where he goes from here, and I think he can have a really good season, but so far he hasn't shown me that. At number 2, I have the Seattle Seahawks. They're a great team with the frontrunner for MVP in Russell Wilson. They have the most underrated running back in Chris Carson. And they have an absolute elite defender in Jamal Adams, great DBs, just need a better D-line and pass rush. Let me go in depth a little bit, just a little bit, talking about what I mean by the last few sentences, the last few observations. I think that Chris Carson is the most underrated running back in the league, because I think he's a top 10 running back, and I don't think people say that enough. I think he's on the level of guys like Alvin Kamara, right? Maybe I'm a little bit, going over the line just a tiny bit, but I really do think he's just that good. And they let him run. They let him cook too in week 1, and he did it great. So I trust him. And I think that Jamal Adams is their best defensive player. I watched him for many years on these struggling Jets teams, and I just knew this guy was special. And he's proved it, being with a good, playoff team, and it's finally great to see him have some team success. And they're actually using him for pass rush. They're blitzing him, which, for his safety, you don't get called upon a lot to do that, which I like that he's blitzing sometimes. But they shouldn't be relying on that for pass rush, which they kind of have. And, if they could just get a little bit more pressure, I think that they could be the number 1 team. But the number 1 team, we've already discussed them, the Baltimore Ravens. So I talked about it earlier, but they're a complete team with no significant holes. They're playing like they're in midseason form. They can win in so many different ways, and they'll be tested on Monday against the Chiefs. I think they can beat you in a gunfight, right? They can beat you, if the score is 40-34, they can beat you. And if the score is 14-10, they can beat you, right? They can win in a grinded out game because their defense is so good, and they can win in, a gunfight because, they have so many weapons, and they have such a great offense. So that is my power rankings for the NFL going into week 3. Let's move on to the second question that Hunter gave, and that was for me to talk about my Super Bowl prediction. This will be a quick little thing. I'm going to gloss over it probably. It's just going to be a quick explanation. But my Super Bowl prediction is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Seattle Seahawks, right? And I may be biased in saying this, but I think the Chiefs will eventually get into their next gear. They haven't been there yet. We know this isn't the best the Chiefs can look, and they really kicked it into the next gear last year in about week 11. Their defense really stepped up, and I think that they'll have a similar thing to do this year. And we'll just see. But I think the Seattle Seahawks have looked too good to be eliminated in the playoffs right now. So I have to predict those two. That's my Super Bowl prediction for this year. And the last question is about the 49ers and how their injuries will impact them. And I believe the 49ers will perform well under Nick Mullins, but not having Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas for the year will keep them from making another deep run. So we know Jimmy Garoppolo is going to come back in a few weeks. And they have one of the best, if not the best, backup quarterback in the league in Nick Mullins. And I think they're going to perform well under him. And Raheem Mostert will be back, right? When you think about it, you're like, wow, this team is pretty good. But they don't have that same scary defensive line anymore. They don't have Solomon Thomas or Nick Bosa, who were huge pieces on their defense. And their defense was kind of the main reason they were in the Super Bowl last year, and the reason they were even up on the Chiefs 20-10 in that same Super Bowl. So I think that's going to prevent them from making a deep run, considering they're both out for the year. And I'm kind of low on the 49ers right now, so it sucks, but I think they'll be stuck in a Super Bowl hangover with all these injuries. So that is actually going to be everything, guys. If you liked that little Q&A segment, remember to drop a comment asking me your questions for the next episode or a future episode of the show. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Man Watches Sports podcast. Please leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and make sure to drop questions to get them answered on a future episode of the show. I know I've been pushing that a lot, but it's really important. I think it drives the show, and that could be a really important segment for later on. So this has been your host, Austin Hoagland, of the Man Watches Sports podcast, and I'm signing off. Thank you, guys.